Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics Club preview. We're up to the third club in the series. We've done a couple of them already this week. We had Adelaide on Monday and we had Brisbane on Wednesday with some special guests from both. So if you haven't checked out either of those two club previews, then make sure you do as we work through all 18 teams. I'm your host, Bales, and you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials. And joining me is a couple of my fellow co-hosts and AFL Fantasy Fanatics. I'll go to one of the newly crowned members in Tom, getting the promotion from AFLW to AFL and AFLW. But Tom, mate, how's your New Year's and Christmas break been, mate? It's been a minute. So how you going?
Yeah, good. Not going to talk about the cricket. We won the test closest to Christmas, so I think that's a win, moral victory and all that. But happy to start talking some footy and forget about that small red ball.
Yeah. Well, is Hull going any better?
We're fourth. We're flying. Me and Jake we're both very happy.
Well, there you go. There's at least something to cheer about in the off season. And jumping on is again one of our other new co-hosts on AFL Fantasy Fanatics. Jumping on for the 2026 season, we'll do a bigger reveal when it goes to our main pod that starts a couple weeks on the Sunday. But for the people listening on the club previews, you get to hear another one of our new co-hosts, and that is our good friend Taezer. Taezer, mate, welcome. Glad to have you on for the 2026 season. How was your Christmas and New Year's break? And yeah, good to have you on.
It was a great one, mate. Lots of time with the family, and yeah, I've been solo parenting the last week with a wife on a cruise, so that's interesting, but good fun. Ready to sink my teeth into some fantasy.
Yeah, exactly right, mate. Yeah, no, looking forward to it. Looking forward to having you on throughout the season as well. But boys, we're chatting about Carlton. So the next two pods that we're going to be doing. So for anyone that is watching on video, you're probably going to see that we're going to be wearing the exact same clothes because we're recording it on the exact same night. Because I think it's pretty easy to get these two smashed out in Carlton and Collingwood because trick is they've got their own two bye, and they're probably not as fantasy relevant as, say, Brisbane were or a few of the other teams are. So, but Carlton, a few key changes here. So they've brought in a few players, a few interesting players that we'll be chatting about. So Liam Reedy being one of those, making the move over to Carlton. Ben Ainsworth, Campbell Chesser, Ollie Florent, and Will Hayward all being traded to Carlton as well. Taylor Byrne, Harry Dean, obviously the father-son going pick 3, make his way to Carlton, and Jack Ison are the ins for Carlton. And the outs are really getting rid of a lot of those sort of depth players and really turn that sort of list over in a couple of trades. Like Jackson Binns, Alex Chincotta, Charlie Curnow traded to Sydney, Tom De Koning to St Kilda, Sam Doherty, obviously fantasy gun, retiring there, Corey Durden, Orazio Fantasia, Elijah Hollands, Harry Lemmy, Jack Silvani, and Will White. So they're all the outs. So a lot of those depth players there. So that may give some chances for some of these younger guys may potentially coming through that we might be able to select to start off with. Team points for, they were ninth last year, 25.1 points per game. Taze, we're having this interesting debate sort of chat before we started recording this, that what way do you think that Carlton's fantasy points goes with a bit of a list turnover, a couple of new ins? We probably project them to maybe slide a bit sort of in terms of wins and that. Does that mean their fantasy points go down along with it, or do we think they control it a bit more, meaning that their fantasy points go up? Where do you see Carlton and their sort of list profile heading into this season?
Yeah, definitely interesting one. I'd be looking to see how they go with those first 5 games. They've got a few easier fixtures, so it might not be the best tell of exactly how they're going to play their game. They may look to go fast if they think they can get the win, but I'm thinking that they're probably going to have a hard year. And often what happens is you want to play fast football, you get your pants beaten off a few weeks in a row, and then you start holding on to the ball. So I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. Tom, do you see sort of, I guess the way I look at it is I think the midfield numbers could maybe sort of stay the same, maybe decrease a little bit, but I think that those defender numbers may increase. I think that they may control the ball a little bit more in defence if we do expect. I'm not expecting them to go full on North Melbourne of a few years ago with Aaron Hall, Jack Zed, just chipping it to each other. But I think maybe there's a bit of an increase there. Do you sort of see it that way as well, or are you sort of few questions that to be answered early in the season?
Yeah, I think I worry about where Carlton see their list and what Carlton's ambitions are. That maybe they think they're not as poor a state as maybe the rest of the AFL community, and they might try and play the quick Hawthorn kind of brand, which isn't particularly fancy conducive or for really big individual scores. However, as the season goes on, if they start suffering some defeats, or especially if they go down in games, we might see a bit more game management just to keep that score respectable. But having that early bye does give us that free look in round 0 to kind of see how they're lining up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Taezer, one thing you sent us into our group chat was the numbers for the sort of the midfield mix and the kick-ins. But how do you see the midfield mix sort of shape? I think we've seen with Carlton, it's sort of been as a few of those, almost too many of those guys. Like you've got Paddy Cripps, you've got Sam Welsh, you've got Adam Cherry, you've got George Hewitt, and it's almost like you can only obviously fit 3 in there. And they've had some other guys also running through there. Do you see it sort of being a fairly similar sort of midfield mix, considering they haven't really brought in any other sort of big mid besides potentially a draftee from last year that we'll chat about that's going to be pretty much in everyone's sides?
Yeah, I see it being pretty similar, at least to start the season. You're going to, Cripps is going to be the big dog in there. He's going to attend pretty much every CBA that he's on the field for, unless things start to change and they want to protect his body, maybe move him up forward or give younger players a go. But that's just his role. Hewitt's going to be in there to a large extent as well. And that third to fourth mid is where it kind of gets interesting because Sam Walsh didn't have that role last year. He was kind of more of the wing, half forward, and only about 55% CBA. So, it's interesting. He could be an option, priced around 93. I don't want to jump forward too much, but he could be an option, but he could also not be an option if he continues the same role. I think that caps his ceiling to a 100-plus player. And then Jagger Smith, he might be one of those guys who's a 50 to 60% CBA, but with low time on ground.
Yeah, exactly. With the 5 on the bench, so might be able to afford to just get him in the midfield, but just have a few extra bench stints there. Kick-ins as well. It's going to be interesting, Taezer, with Nick Newman back. Obviously took majority of them last year, the year before. But last year we saw Adam Sard was the main guy, and then there was sort of like a spluttering of a few other guys. If it wasn't Sard, there'd be like a Ollie Hollands, Jacob Wiedering would take some, Mitch McGovern. But do you just see it being a pretty much Nick Newman, Adam Sard, whichever one of those two? It's just purely those two?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't see much else changing, unless, of course, they start really trying to give opportunities to young guys and get the ball in the hand.
Yeah. And then their fixture, Tom, obviously they've got Sydney in opening round, which is a tricky match, but then they've got 3 of the next 4 are actually green matchups going on last year's data. How do you see their start to season then, I guess, their whole fixture going as a whole? Do they have would you say they've got a better fixture, average fixture? Where are you seeing that at the moment?
Well, we're kind of really only focusing on the first kind of 5 to 8 weeks at the start of the year. As I said, they've got quite a nice opening. And with that red Sydney fixture in round 0, if someone pops in that game, that might mean, especially with a very distinctive role, that might lead to some good early season scores, which can either do cash or points or both. We've seen various Carlton players over the last few years. Hewitt last year, Cripps a couple of years ago, get off to absolutely flyers from a fantasy point of view. So maybe there'll be someone who comes out the hat this year and starts on an absolute tear.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's chat about some of those players, shall we? So we got a few players here, not as many as Brisbane. Brisbane, seemed like there was almost a whole list because they're a stacked team and they got a lot of very good players that we're chatting about. But most relevant, so Tom, you mentioned Sam Walsh before. he's obviously cheap. And I think we all know that he's got the ability to go at 110. But the big question about that is, one, if he stays fit, because there always seems to be a hiccup in preseason, which, as we know, AFL players, they have a full preseason, they get out of the box flying. But if they have an interrupted preseason, it can really hamper them throughout the year, particularly back half of the year. And also, with all those Carlton mids, is he going to get that prime sort of top 2 mid CBA juicy midfield role? I guess a big opening round watch, but are you looking at him? Is there a certain score he'd get an opening round that would make you consider someone like Sam Walsh?
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 sure things in life, right? There's death, taxes, and talking about Sam Walsh in January. Every season we seem to be here and we're like, is this going to be the year that Sam Walsh breaks out as a superstar of a fantasy game? To me, he's in the black book. He's on the short list. We know he has a 105, 110 capability in the right role. My worry is with Hewitt, with Cripps, with Chera, with Jagger Smith, with Jesse Motlop, who saw a bump towards the end of last year in the CBAs. How around the ball is he going to be? Is he playing high half forward? Is he effectively going to be the spare midfielder and be free to run around and get a load of +6s, which could be a nice role? Or is he going to be stuck out on a wing, which really caps his scoring to kind of where he's priced at to that 100 mark, which wouldn't be enough? So it's definitely going to be a pre-season round 0 watch. I'm not going to say he won't be in my starting team, but I think he would have to go 130 plus in a great role to push my hand to start with that round 2 buy.
Yeah, and I think with a few of those guys around the similar price or a tiny bit more expensive that haven't got early buys, i.e. Zach Butters, Jai Caldwell, a couple of other names that we'll chat about as well throughout the series that don't have early buys, that they get that extra game, and you're probably sort of leaning towards starting someone like that. So, yeah, no, Sam Walsh definitely on the short list to be looking at. A very fantasy sort of friendly name that we've known Taezer for a number of years is Nick Newman. Obviously was out all last year with a pretty bad knee injury. He'll be back this year, priced pretty cheaply, priced in the low 70s. Obviously, opening round sort of complicates that, but some good early fixtures. If we're sort of thinking maybe Carlton control the ball a bit more in the back half, potentially, if they're going to struggle a bit more, do you see Nick Newman being someone that there's going to be right high up on your watch list, particularly pre-season opening round?
Yeah, I'd probably find him as opposed to Jagger, who's basement price. Newman's probably the person who's highest up on my list. He just has the potential multiple years averaging in the high 80s or 90s, even over 100. So I think he's the one who's actually most likely going to be in there. And because of those fixtures, if he goes 100 plus in that first game and then plays Richmond in round 1, if you wait until round after his buy to bring him in, he's lost a bunch of that value because he'll just shoot up in price. So he's probably the one that I wouldn't wait, as opposed to back to Sam Walsh. I would almost rather watch 2 weeks of Sam Walsh, see that he's playing as a high CBA midfielder, and then consider whether or not to pay 100 for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that the thing I like with Newman is we'll get into the nuances of when we're picking our teams, everything. But in the early drafts I've done on the team, there's a team pick. I think DC Talk have shared it. I think AFL Fantasy have shared it. So if you want to go pick a team before the website's gone out, do check it out. But I'm putting Zeke Ewing in my midfield and he's defending mid, picking Nick Newman. You can cover him with a mid, putting Zeke Ewing back into defense. So just a few little thing there that might help sort of fitting Nick Newman into your team, even with that early buy. So I do like him. Jagger Smith, don't think there's really much to add. He's in the basement. It's going to be cheap as. We're all going to start him because he's going to be in the team. Apparently, he's having an amazing preseason. They're all blown away by how well he's going. He's going to be basement, so either put him on the bench or potentially use an M8 option starting on the field, Tom.
I will just temper with Jagger Smith. It is his first time playing AFL football. I know he is an elite talent, but let's just watch. We'll get the round 0 watch of his role. I assume it's going to be around the ball in some way, shape, or form, whether that be mid forward or high half forward or even wing or something like that. Let's just be a little bit cautious that it could be a forward role to start off, and it might be a bench only option. It might not be an M8 option. So it could be CBA role, launching, get him on field, fabulous. But let's just watch and wait and not make too many of these decisions in January when, as we all know, things do change.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's locked in. I think it just really comes down to bench or field. I think that's pretty much where it goes 100%. There. And then Liam Reedy, Taezer. He's obviously made the move over from your Dockers. It's going to be interesting. Him and Pitney, do they share it? I think a lot of these teams are going to go to dual ruck setups this year with 5 on the bench. There will be teams, I think like a Bulldogs, for example, will keep just Tim English there and they'll chop out with say, a Darcy or a Norton or a Lob or something like that, or maybe like another team like Tristan Cherry at North Melbourne. They'll keep probably him just as the solo ruck. But Carlton, don't know which way it's going to go because they do like using Mackay potentially as that backup ruck. Where do you see Liam Reid? Do you see him playing alongside Pitney? Do you see him being ahead of Pitney potentially? Obviously, a big preseason watch. We're chatting before we've seen any games or anything like that, but I'm sure someone's going to be at least on your watch list as a ruck forward.
Yeah, he's on my he's on my watch list, but he'd have to do a lot to get his way into my team. I've watched him as a Freo supporter. I've seen him train last preseason, and I've seen him actually get kind of pushed around in the waffle by non-league rucks. So I'm not certain that he is actually the fantasy proposition that a lot of people are saying. I think he probably needs Pitnet to be out of the team to actually be worthwhile. Because if he's that R2, he's had games. If he's that second choice ruck for Carlton, he's already had games like that for Freo, and he averaged about 40. Like he's not. When you get a player like that, you're actually better off just having a red dot than have someone scoring 40. So, I would only consider him if Pitnet's not in the side.
Yeah, well, if you're probably not looking at Reedy as much of a fantasy proposition, obviously in pre-season, is Matt Pitney. If Reedy's not there and he's a solo ruck, is he someone that maybe is a value play? Obviously, opening round complicates it a bit, but any interest there potentially?
Not for me. Not in Classic.
No.
In a really deep draft league. In a really deep draft league. No. Really deep draft league, maybe as an R2 option, but
yeah, I think I agree. Yeah. I think I agree. Watch him at least, but yeah, I think I agree. I think that they'll be sharing or probably not looking there as an option. So pod spicy pick. So I guess we'll all take one. We've got 3 here. So I'll go through the first one. So he was the bane of my existence last year, especially when I owned Sam Doherty. Didn't like him, didn't like Holland, didn't like any of those Carlton defenders because all they did was just bang it long. But Lockie Cowan is someone I'm not like to start with. I think he's someone that could be an interesting draft pick, but I think one of the other ones that you'll chat about, Tom, that could complicate things as a new recruit going back there. But Lockie Cowan last year, so he obviously played a few games early, played a couple of games of VFL, but then came back in round 17. So for the last 8 games, had an average of 79.5, had one score of 56. The rest of those games were over 80 bar 2. So he had 2 scored in the 70s, and then what's that? 5 games in the 80s. So nothing over 90, hit 89 a couple of times, but someone that if Carlton going to control the ball a bit more, if he gets a bit more responsibility potentially back there as a young player, just someone maybe draft boards, maybe gets bumped up a bit because he'll be showing what an average of him. What was his average for all of last year? Was in I believe it was in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. No, 63. So probably 63. Maybe draft, he could go in the 70s and could be a decent enough pick. And Classic, I'd want to see a fair bit if I'm really. That's why he's a pod play spicy pick. But just the name I thought I would add there. But the other guy, Tom, that you were looking at there, Ollie Florent, I guess as a sort of passing interest that could be mid only complicates it. But do you think maybe gets half back roll?
Yeah, mid only is annoying, but priced at 60, we know he's done better than that in previous years for Sydney off that halfback, kind of in a team which doesn't it's not famous for really high scoring halfbacks. We know he's a good kick of the footy, and that's what Carlton are kind of lacking through their side is good users of the ball. So I'd think he'd play off halfback, and I think they want to get the ball in his hands. So I think he's comfortably best 23 as well. So that's someone maybe to bump up your draft, bump up your draft rankings, maybe to look at maybe getting defensive status in round 6. But as a mid-only in Classic, he would have to do something super special, take all the kick-ins, play a half-back, and get used an awful lot to force my hand to take a midfield spot in round 1.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. But yeah, it could be someone stashed on the bench and a bench in draft, maybe gets DPP, and could be a bit of a flyer there. And then the final one here to end off, Taezer. Harry Mackay's someone I just put down here as well. But end of last year with a couple of decent scores, averaged 95.8 from his final 4 games. Obviously, he's had a couple of injuries last couple of years and a few things on the field he's just had to deal with, but seemed to get back into some form in the last 4 or 5 games. With Kerno out, becomes the focal point there, maybe gets that backup ruck role if they don't play both Reedy and Pitney. Is, I guess, another draft potential one there, but maybe is there any sort of interesting Classic, maybe not to start with, but with the forward line being so bare, could he be someone that maybe sort of surprised a few and averages close to that 90?
Probably not, to be honest. Just having that key forward role, maybe back end of the season, he could be a chance in good fixtures. Tough thing is he's going to have good fixtures early in the season, and he's not low enough price to be really good value. Like, he's kind of awkward. He's at a 78, so there's a little bit there, but because of his role, it's it's really hard to go on a flyer and think, all right, he's gonna score hundreds or high 90s in those games for me to give him a go. And then he's got the buy as well. So look, just probably not, unfortunately, which is going to be most of these Carlton players.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so then that wraps up Carlton, because there's obviously probably not much more other players I think to chat about in terms of fantasy rollings. But I think
there's one player I want to chat about. One more player who might have a little bit of value.
Yeah, you put it in our notes.
Put it in our chat.
I forgot to throw you. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, it's okay. And it's Ben Ainsworth. So he's moved from Gold Coast Suns this season, priced at 58. In 2022 and 2023, he averaged about 75. So that's 17 points of value. I'd need to see his role. If he's playing high half forward up around the ball, especially with the loss of Kerno, the loss of senior forwards, it's Hayward, Mackay, and probably him as the 3 senior forward half players for Carlton this year. Could he get back towards that kind of average in 2026? It's definitely a possibility. Definitely someone I'm going to bump it up slightly from in my draft rankings, out of the big log jam around 60 and maybe a little bit higher up. Just a watch, someone who has scored pretty well in a forward role in fantasy before. So yeah, that's my little Ben Ainsworth plug.
Yep, don't mind the shout. No, don't mind the shout. Could be a sneaky one, at least in draft, potentially, but watching preseason for sure. But yeah, I guess in terms of players, I think Jagger Smith's going to be in all our sides as long as he's named round 1. Just depends if he's MA or on the bench. And I guess we've all said Sam Walsh, Nick Newman are both sort of on the watch list to see how they go, and Liam Reedy, I guess, depending on how he goes. If he's sharing Pitney, if he's solo, well, I guess we'll have to find out there. But don't think there's probably too many others other than that will be starting in our side. So that'll do us for the Carlton preview. So 3 clubs down. The first week is done. Club previews. Tom, thank you very much for jumping on once again, mate. Where can people find you across the socials? And any last thoughts?
You can find me on X at Tom_Hales_. We will know more as the season goes on. Some amazing track watchers. I don't think we're all going to be starting with a lot of Blues to start the year, but we'll see. We'll see come March.
Yeah, exactly. And Taezer, mate, as I said, good to have you on board for the 2026 season as well. And thanks for jumping on. Where can people find you across the socials?
Yeah, great to be on, Bales. Thanks, mate. People can find me at Taezer87 on Twitter.
Beautiful. Go and follow Taezer and Tom. And you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials and us at AFL Fantasy Fans on X. We'll be back on Monday for our Collingwood preview. So make sure you guys do tune into that and catch up on the previous 2 episodes. If you did enjoy it, make sure you smash a like on the video. Just got to click the thumbs up on YouTube. It takes a couple of seconds. It really does help us out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already. Plenty of content coming out the preseason and throughout the season as a whole. And we'll catch you guys on Monday. So have a good weekend, guys. We'll chat to you then. See ya.